So this may be an unpopular opinion, but I absolutely hate the original Dreamcast controller. I think it's a piece of crap. It's uncomfortable. It has a few interesting ideas which were executed pretty poorly. The D-pad sucks. The analog stick sucks. It's shaped in a way that hurts my wrist at least after long gameplay sessions. Well, fast forward to 2020, that may have been solved, thanks to retro fighters. Let's take a look at these. So this is not going to be just a review, but also a comparison between these two controllers. First of all, just want to get this out of the way, I no longer own the original OEM Dreamcast controller. Reason being, as soon as I bought this wired one about a year ago, I immediately decided, okay, never using this piece of shit again, and I sold both of my OG Dreamcast controllers on eBay. So, right off the bat, brownie points for these. As for pricing, they're pretty similar. Believe it or not, the wired one is actually $5 more, at least at the time of this recording. Right now, this is $55, this is $50. Both are a little pricey considering what they are, because they're one-trick ponies. You can only really use it on a Dreamcast, but if you hate the original controller like I do, it's worth it. But I found it weird. It kind of doesn't make sense why the wired one would be a little bit more expensive than this one, but it is what it is. It's going to be a preference thing, of course. I do think this one is just a little bit nicer, but they're both great. I would be perfectly happy using either one of these. Let's start with the wire controller. First of all, right off the bat, it feels great in the hand, especially compared to the original Dreamcast controller. It feels a little cheap as far as the materials, but I've not had any issues with it. Take care of your stuff and you're fine. If you have kids, though, or you rage quit and you want to throw this thing across the room, I don't know how that's going to survive without cracking or something, but it doesn't feel bad. I'm just putting that out there. So anyway, the buttons, they're pretty firm, but not overly firm. I think they're just right. I like the fact that they're a little bit closer together rather than what's on the original, because it's easy to hit these at the same time if you need, like this. The shoulder buttons, they're okay. It takes a little bit more force than what you would expect to actually actuate them. They're also pretty damn loud. Well, as these, but yeah. And then the triggers, they're fine. They got just the right amount of tension, in my opinion. They feel a little bit like the original Dreamcast controller, but not bad. They're spring-loaded, obviously, as you can see. You have a turbo feature and a clear feature, meaning you can actually map turbo to individual buttons, which is pretty cool. Good for shooters. So, like, hold that, hit that, and you're good. You got turbo. And if you want to clear it, just hold that, hit that, you're good. Start button right here. You have two spots to put your VMUs. The cable comes out the top. Thank you for that. The D-pad has a decent pivot to it. It's not perfect. It's definitely not Sega Genesis or Saturn territory, but it works. It does the job for stuff like Street Fighter. You can still do your quarter circles. You just have to be a little bit more careful to pull it off. This is a Hall Effect analog stick, rubberized, concave instead of convex. Once again, thumbs up for that. My only complaint is there's a little bit of play in this. As you can see, even if I kind of tilt it back and forth, you can sort of see it rocking by itself. Feels a little loose when you use it. But I've had it for about a year. I've not had any problems whatsoever out of it. It's just a tiny bit loose is all. So it's just something to keep in mind. It clicks in like an L3 or R3. Doesn't have any function, but it's there. Just thought I'd mention it. 10-foot cable, quite long, very generous. The cable itself is pretty pliable, so not overly stiff like a Genesis controller, so that's nice. Something to mention too is it is pretty lightweight right out of the box here. I mean, there is a lot of empty space here, but when you fill that with your VMUs, you're good. And it pretty much feels like any other controller in terms of weight once you place put these in here. So, not too bad. Here's a close-up look of the box. Pretty standard stuff. There's nothing really crazy inside of it. It's literally just a box on a box, and you get your controller. Here's the side. Here's the back, telling you all the features. It does have, you can put a vibration pack in here. Yeah. So next up, we have the wireless version, and this is actually definitely an improvement. Not just because it's wireless, but there are a couple little quirks about it that I like better than the other controller, which I'm about to explain. So first of all, I don't like things nudging up against my knuckles here when I'm holding a controller. That is still kind of an issue with this, similar to the original Dreamcast controller, okay? because of that right there. So like when I'm holding this, I mean, it's comfortable, but my knuckle does kind of nudge against that. It can be a little annoying sometimes. Not an issue here because there's nothing really to press against. So feels very similar to like a Switch Pro controller. Except honestly in the hands, I think this is even better than that. But very comfortable. In terms of materials, it feels very similar, but the weight is there probably because of the battery and the built-in vibration, okay? You still have your turbo function, so hold that, hit that, and you got turbo just on this, or you can do all of them, doesn't matter. Or you can clear. The shoulder buttons are much better. They're a lot more sensitive and not overly so, and they're quieter. These are much more practical, especially for fighting games, and you don't have to hit them directly on the top. You can just nudge it like that and you're good. But again, they're not overly sensitive, it's just right. The buttons are a little more firm, a little louder than the wired one, but it could just be a break-in period. I've only had this for a day, or actually less than a day. The triggers are more like a PS4 or PS3 controller triggers. They're not bad though, they're very comfortable still. I think they feel a little bit better than the wired one. These are a teeny bit more light on tension, but it's not bad. I haven't had any issues. These buttons are fine. You have your sync button, USB-C, which is cool. And the most important part, besides ergonomics to me, the stick and the D-pad. This D-pad is a little bit better. There's just a little more of a pivot here to it, as you can see. So quarter circles, things like that for Street Fighter. Again, it's not Sega Saturn territory as far as the D-pad, but it's still very good, very competent. It's a little bit better than the wired version. The analog stick is improved. As you can see, no wobbling, no play here. It's got a little bit more tension when you're actually using it. Once again, it's rubberized. Once again, it's Hall effect. Good there. This is pretty much, to me, the perfect Dreamcast controller. If this is your first time seeing the wireless version of the StrikerDC, you're probably wondering, well, where do you put the VMU? You put it in this little dock here. So you plug this in into your system. The VMU goes right here. My only critique is it will only fit one. As you can see, there's only one place for one. It's not the end of the world, at least not to me. I mean, even if you have multiple VMUs, get off your ass and put another one in if you need it. Yeah, you just plug it in, sit it on your table, you're good. It has a pretty good weight to it. It's not going to move around. It has rubber feet on the bottom, which holds at least, on my setup, it holds just fine. Has your sync button, good there. USB-C port again. And here is the box. Standard stuff, once again, very similar to the wired one. There's what you have on the back here. Hall effects, VMU dock included. There's built-in vibration. You have a 30-foot wireless range. Upgradable firmware. Not sure what the point of that is, but whatever. And in case you don't have a billion of these laying around, it also comes with a USB-C cable. One question you may be asking too is, how is latency on this controller? Well, if you're using a CRT, you're not going to feel it. At least I don't, and I'm extremely particular when it comes to latency. So if you're using a CRT for your Dreamcast, you're good. If you're using your Dreamcast on a modern display, I have no idea because I don't use a modern display for my Dreamcast. So your mileage may vary, I'm not sure. However, having that said, it is 2.4 gigahertz, so it's RF, which means it will have less latency, much less latency than, say, a Bluetooth controller. So keep that in mind. Something to point out with these triggers in comparison to the wireless one as well. You can't really tell on video. It's hard to really capture something like this on video. It's a feel thing, but even though they're analog and they're spring-loaded, these feel a slight bit mushy. But then when you compare it to this, it's got a little bit lighter throw. See there? These are a little bit more responsive, and they feel better to me. These don't feel bad at all. I just wanted to point that out, that these, in comparison, they have a little bit more tension, but at the same time, they feel a little bit mushy. So with my setup, here's how this receiver is going to look when I plug it in. Plug it in here, and I just kind of set it off to the side. It's out of my way, right? I had to push my Genesis back just a hair, but nothing crazy. Alright, how about we play some games? Alright, so first I'm just going to demonstrate the latency. So if I hit this, you can see, you really can't see any. At least not on the CRT. So yeah, no issues there. Quarter circles. No issue. I'm using both the shoulder and the... Yeah. Here's the wired one. Obviously you're not going to have latency, but this feels just a teeny bit more shallow than the wireless one. So, I mean, you can still do it, as you can see, no issues. It just takes the smallest amount more effort. And if you're really heated and, you know, you're on your toes, sometimes you may make mistakes more often. Like I just did that because of this. This is kind of squared off right here, and it takes a bit more force to hit that. So it just takes a little bit more effort. You can still do it. It's not really a problem. It is still better than the original Dreamcast controller. Back to the wireless. See? Quarter circles, not an issue. Same with this one, but again, just want to drive the point home. It just takes a little bit more effort, but you can see I'm not missing any inputs. There's no like accidental diagonals or anything like that. Okay. Another little demonstration showing the lack of latency on this controller. Here's the menu. It's instant. So here's some Tony Hawk gameplay. I have the music turned off to avoid the copyright police, but here's the wireless controller. I'm not the greatest at the first one. I'm not used to it anymore. But, yeah, if you see me do that, it's not the controller's fault, I promise. But yeah, using the D-pad on this thing, no problem. Good stuff. Yay. Now, if you're an analog stick player, of course the analog stick works fine. I don't know why in the hell you would use analog stick on a Tony Hawk game, but there you go. I don't have really any issues with it, besides me just sucking at using it. Yeah, see, I just flip right back to the D-pad. Wired controller. Not really having any issues with the D-pad on here either. Could be my imagination, but it feels like it takes just a little bit more force though to control with this one, but it's not bad. Anyway, let's try the analog stick. No issues there. God, ugh. This is called Ducks. Came out in the later 2000s, actually. It's a pretty new game. So first, I'm going to demonstrate actually the turbo function. So right now, by default, if you hold the button down, as you can see, it does a charge shot, right? Now, let's map a turbo button. So I'll just hold this, hit this, and now it's on auto fire. And if I want to go back, hold it, clear, and I just killed myself. Sweet. It's a preference thing, but some people may like D-pad, some people may like analog. When it comes to shooters like this, I prefer analog, and it's performing excellent right here. No issues, whatsoever. No missed inputs. There's no drift, anything like that. I'm getting my ass kicked because I'm watching the camera, not the game, but that's okay. Here's the D-pad. Obviously, no issues there. Not having any issues with going diagonal or anything. I just find the analog stick is much more precise when it comes to these kind of games. Here's the wired version. First, we'll start with the D-pad. D-pad feels fine. No issues with diagonals, no missed inputs, nothing like that. I prefer, once again, using the analog stick here. Now, because this is a little bit looser than the other one, it's feeling a little bit weird to me, but I'm also looking at the camera, not the actual TV, so it's throwing me off. And the turbo function, it works exactly the same on here, which I'll demonstrate. So right now I'm using a charge shot. Alright, go ahead and hit that, and now it's auto fire. No charge shot. If I want to clear it and go back to my charge shot, then just hit that again. I died. Hydro Thunder. Let's try this. So here's the wireless one. This is going to demonstrate the triggers as well as the analog stick. Very precise feeling. I like it. You can use the D-pad too, but why would you? Holding down the trigger here. Trigger feels good. It feels very natural in my hand. I'm running into the wall because I'm looking at the camera, not the screen again. Let's see, what's the, I don't remember what the turbo button is. Okay, it's A. I have no complaints with this. As you can see, it's very responsive if I nudge it over or if I just very slightly, you know. I can go a little or I can go a lot. And I'm feeling that rumble hitting these walls. I need to watch the TV and not the camera. Okay. Let's try the wired version. Analog stick, once again, is fine. You can do very fine or subtle movements and it's good. Or you can completely go crazy and it's fine. It's very precise, just like the other one. Turbo. I love this game. This game's a blast. Especially when I'm watching the TV and not the camera. So yeah, I have no issues with this. The trigger's fine too. I prefer the trigger on the wireless one. It just, there's not as much travel on the wired one, and it feels a little bit more mushy. It just doesn't feel as precise. It works, but it's not as precise. Which, it's not the biggest deal breaker for that regard because, I mean, how many games do you really need to make subtle movements with the triggers? Not very many. Honestly, I can't really think of any. Even racing games. So here's Blue Stinger. I mainly just wanted to show this because I read a comment on another guy's video where they bought the wireless controller and he wasn't running at full speed when they pressed the analog stick all the way forward. I guess they got a lemon because that's not an issue with mine. As you can see, he's running full speed. They made it seem like basically he would only run about this fast when they pushed it all the way, but no, it's full speed with his controller. And here's the wired one. Same thing, he's running full speed, there's no issues here. So yeah, as far as range of motion here, it's not an issue with either one of my controllers. It's about time somebody made these. I'm sorry, but the original one, it just hurts my hands after a while, so I'm so glad I have these. They're both great. One's better than the other. This one, if I had to rate them both out of 5, this would be a 4, this would be a 4.5, and the original would be like a 2, okay? I just like the fact that I don't have to fight with a controller anymore and just focus on playing the damn game. My critiques for the wired one. The shoulder buttons, I think, are a little too clunky and they're a little too squared off. Like I said, it takes just a little more effort to use these, especially in fighting games. The triggers, while they're okay, they have a little bit too short of a throw in my opinion, and they also feel a little mushy, which can make it a little awkward in some games. The joystick. It's kind of wobbly and it's too loose for my liking. It's still better than the original using this, but it can feel a little weird on some games, especially like, say, Sonic Adventure. Also, this is called Retro Fighters. You would think they would be catering to fighting game fans, right? At least that's how they market themselves. Well, they need to put a better D-pad on both of these. These are not bad. They're still very serviceable. They do the job, but I would expect something like more like a Saturn controller as far as the D-pad goes. Something deadly accurate if you want something good for fighting games or 2D games in general. Still though, this is not bad at all. Much better than the original, so I can't really complain too much. Also, being that it's Retro Fighters, why are there not 6 face buttons? Put L and R right here. My critiques for the wireless one. Not much to really critique on, but once again, since it's Retro Fighters, put a better D-pad on this. This one is better than the wired one, this D-pad here, but still, I would expect something just a little bit nicer. And all this empty space, especially on this model, put an L and R right there. Make it a 6-button controller for fighting games. Besides the controller itself, I don't know why they didn't put 2 VMU slots on this receiver. Again, it's not the end of the world, but they could have very easily made this stackable. Yeah, it would have looked clunky, but hey, you get 2 VMU slots just like the original. Or the wired one. And until next time, thanks for coming along and checking out these controllers with me. I hope it was informative, hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going back to playing some Dreamcast. Have a good day.